Hello, I'm so sorry you're being kept waiting. It's Andrew Mitchell, the Member of Parliament for the Royal Town of Sutton Coalfield. We're just waiting for Andy Street because he's dealing with very important mayoral business and it's just slightly overrun. We think he's going to be with us really within about literally 1 minute. And hey presto, here he is. He's here, he's joined. And Andy, you're very welcome. I'm just sort of introducing you in your absence, but would you just like to say hello so we know you can hear us and we can hear you?
I would, Andrew, thank you. And my apologies for being 7 minutes late. Andrew will tell you it's not my normal form, but I was on an external thing and I just couldn't get off it. But I knew your Member of Parliament would bust beautifully, so no real problem.
Well, the Member of Parliament's only just come in fact, because we were waiting and hoping that you would be with us. But we just started this literally, so you haven't missed anything. But I want to apologise to my constituents for the very slight delay. And we will go on for an extra 6 minutes at the end. So we will have the Mayor of the West Midlands for the full hour. And we're going to make sure that at least 2/3 of this Ask Andy meeting, 2/3 of that hour, is to answer your questions. So do keep them coming. First of all, Simon Ward, who's the leader of the Royal Sutton Coalfield Town Council, and I are going to bowl 4 generic questions at Andy, just really to set the scene, 4 big issues in the town. But first of all, I want just to sort of introduce Andy. Andy knows the Royal Town extremely well. I'm always saying to him that the Royal Town, if you look at in the Sunday papers and you read the property sections, you will find that the Royal Town of Sutton Coalfield is always in the top 5 or 6 places that are best to live in Britain. We're very lucky in Sutton Coalfield. We have a wonderful community, a wonderful place, and of course we have our stresses and strains. But it's a great place to live. And the job of all of us really is to try and make sure that we enhance all the good things in the Royal Town and that we tackle the things that are going wrong, the things that aren't as we want them, the things that you think can be improved. It's our job to serve you, look after the interests of the town and everyone who lives in it. And tonight we've got the Mayor of the West Midlands, who is our regional mayor. He looks after 30 parliamentary constituencies. So we're just one of those, though we are, of course, the most important one in his bailiwick. But we've also got the leader of the town council. So you've got local government represented, national government through your Member of Parliament, and the regional government through Andy Street. And be in no doubt at all that what the mayor does for us is incredibly important. I mean, Sutton Coalfield is a very conservative place. I always say to my Labour friends in the town that they're really quite conservative if you look underneath their views. We are a big conservative one nation town, and we are very dependent indeed on our mayor because the mayor is able to secure for the West Midlands, if he's successful, the goodies from central government. And the reason why I'm so keen on Andy Street and so grateful to him for the interest he takes in Sutton Coalfield is because he's a highly effective operator in the jungles of Whitehall and Westminster. And he is able to take on the government and tell them what we need and wrest every penny out of them. And it really matters because if a successful West Midlands mayor is able to deliver for the West Midlands, if the government trusts him, then there is so much we can do. And Andy wears his conservatism quite lightly on his sleeve, really. He is a tremendous fighter for the West Midlands and for us. And he's good, as I said, at getting stuff out of government. He's got the blood of Birmingham and the West Midlands flowing through his veins. He's lived and worked here. He's a senior businessman. And that's what we need. We need someone who's able to really work hard to ensure that as we come out of this dreadful pandemic, we have growth in the region, we have jobs in the region, we tackle skills in the region, and we really make sure that we come out of this and recover and move to a brighter and better future. So, Andy, we're delighted you've come to Sutton Coalfield tonight. If I can just ask you to say a few words about your mayoral team, what you've achieved, because you've been a regular visitor to the town, and we see you a lot. But just tell us a bit about what you've done for Sutton Coalfield in your time as our mayor.
So thank you, Andrew. And your constituents on the call should know that, yes, your Member of Parliament summons me very regularly. And we've done everything from schools to community groups, the food bank, we see businesses. So yeah, I hope I have really had lots and lots of engagement with Sutton. Now, what's the job of the mayor all about is probably the question that's behind Andrew's piece. And it is ultimately about the success of the West Midlands economy. And particularly then I have direct responsibility for transport, for our over 16 skills development, and of course also for the housing strategy, not as the individual planning authority, but total number of homes being delivered. And I think the most important thing that's happened for Sutton is that pre-pandemic, we were seeing actually an incredibly successful economy in the West Midlands. We had record employment levels. We'd had the most successful regional economy of anywhere for the previous 5 years, growth of 25%. And there's absolutely no question that Sutton residents have taken a leading role in that. The brutal truth is that that has been knocked sideways by the pandemic. And really the question now is, how are we going to rebuild? And particularly, how are we going to find those jobs? And we estimate we need about 100,000 jobs to fill those that have been lost. There are specific things that are relevant for Sutton, which I'm sure questions will be about. Defending the green belt's been important, investing in public transport, serving Sutton, and of course working alongside the town council and thinking about the future of the town. But the mega picture is really the West Midlands economy, Andrew.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, Andy, I think we're going to just bowl those 4 generic questions I mentioned earlier. But the first one is that you have responsibility for strategic housing matters. And before you became our mayor, we fought a long, hard battle to stop development on our green belt. We were very much in favour in the Royal Town in building new homes. We understand that we need to build more homes, but they need to be built in the right places. And everyone, I think, in the town felt that building on our green belt, of which there's limited supply in the West Midlands, was the wrong thing to do. Anyway, that's passed now, and we're all trying to make sure that we get the best out of this new Langley development and make it a plus for the town rather than a minus. And we're all involved in that. Simon at local level, me in the town, and you more widely. But the great thing about your mayoralty is that you have really championed this matter with central government about building in the right place. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Yes, with pleasure. And it's interesting that the experience in Sutton was going on just as my last campaign was starting. And actually it was etched in my mind. We stood in the fields next to Warmley, and I thought there and then, I can't let this happen again. As you say, it was passed by the time I became mayor, but I thought it can't happen again. So I have fought, I hope valiantly, to support what I call a brownfield first approach. We have to build the homes for the future. The target, and it's an eye-watering target, 215,000 homes by 2031 is what's required for a growing region. And by the way, we are on target, achieving 17,000 a year, doubling the number of homes built every year. But they have nearly all been on brownfield land. No greenfield incursion has occurred in the Black Country or in Birmingham in my time as mayor. And I'm actually very proud of that. And the way we've achieved this, back to something else you said, Andrew, was to get cash out of central government, over £400 million now, that enables us to clean up derelict old industrial sites, get them ready for redevelopment, and then private developers are building the homes on those brownfield sites. If we continue that, it means we don't have to have another Warmley Fields experience.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, another area where we've been working closely together is both you and I and Simon is on the town centre, big issue in the Royal Town. And Simon is the spider at the centre of the web because he's got a committee which is bringing in every part, Birmingham City Council, the Town Council, me, you. And so Simon, I think you're going to say something about the town centre.
Thank you, Andrew, and welcome again to Sutton Coalfield, Andy. It's great to have you with us this evening. This is something that we've talked about and that you alluded to in your opening remarks. There clearly has been a trend in changing shopping behaviours. You know that from your history as well as your present. That's obviously been accelerated by the pandemic. And I think I'd just like to get your thoughts on the Sutton Coalfield Town Centre Master Plan that, as Andrew's alluded to, the town centre, the town regeneration partnership has put together, and just get your thoughts on where we go with that moving forward.
Yeah, With pleasure, Simon. And I have to say thank you for what you've done to lead this. And I do get just how significant this is for residents. Every time I come to Sutton and we do a Q&A in any group, this is the first question. And we did a survey, MP and Mayor survey 2 summers ago. And again, it was overwhelmingly the most important issue. So it's brilliant that we now have a master plan. Now let's think about the significance of that word. It's a master plan. Really important. It's not sticking plasters. It's saying, how are we going to think once and for all about what a new town centre can be? Because if I'm really honest, it does not grace the town that it serves at the moment. So many successes, things to be proud of in Sutton Coalfield. The town centre isn't as good as it could be. So the elements of it that I think are absolutely mission critical. First of all, the bit I'm directly responsible for, a new public transport interchange. That's got to be a sense of arrival in Sutton, and also it will help remodel the parade by actually taking the public transport out at the moment and obviously make the bus and the train interchange good. The housing that is planned will bring life into the town. I see a question just come up on the chat about that. Housing developments of the right quality in the town centre, that's a big trend. And then actually this whole question of the concentration of retail into the creation of a new heart in the middle of the town with less retail, but of a better quality, more local providers I want to see. We see some of the best town centres revivals around that. And of course, we also need to think about the public services and how they're provided in the town. And we've had a clue about that with the library, of course, in the town as well. So there are a number of critical moves that I genuinely think if we work in concert, we can bring in private sector development stimulated by the public sector in order to change it for the good.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Steve. I mean, it's going to take time, but you know, just as in Mere Green, where it took a long time to work out what to do, but once we knew what to do in Mere Green, we went along and did it. And Mere Green is a great success now. I think everyone is very pleased with how that's turned out. And we now know what to do with the town centre. And thanks to the close working, I think, of the mayor, the leader of the council and the member of parliament, we are now forging ahead. As I say, it will take time, but at least we're on the road for that. Well, thank you, Andy, very much for your comments. Now, the third of our sort of generic questions is on transport, because transport is incredibly important to the economy. It's incredibly important to the convenience of my constituents. And you've made this a priority, which is so important. And I wondered whether you could just tell us a word or two about what you've done and what you're going to do. And I'm thinking of the visits we've made to Sutton Coalfield Station, for example, and the work that you've been doing, supporting local efforts in respect of the park, what I call the park line. Would you like to say a word about that?
Of course. So, yes, so I am directly responsible for the transport. Transport for the West Midlands reports to me. So if the X5 bus is late, people write to me. So it's across to bear as well as a huge opportunity. And the way to think about transport, though, is it's absolutely critical to the economic future of the town and the city as well. So let's have a little look about what we've done. First of all, the cross-city line, perhaps the sort of the main artery of public transport in Sutton. Perhaps two things to call out. We are having a huge modernisation of the fleet on that line. Often it's overcrowded when we have the 3-car trains. This is not an Ever Neverland promise. The rolling stock is being built as we speak, a factory in Derby, and will be delivered before the end of this year. Complete overhaul, about 40% more capacity when you take the number of carriages on those trains. And they'll have all the latest facilities, the Wi-Fi points started up. So really the best in the country in terms of that. And that's through a collaboration with West Midlands Trains that's brought that about. And I hope people also say when they haven't performed, I've also been pretty tough with them. And last year we managed to negotiate a unique reduction in season ticket prices for 1 year. It turned out to be the pandemic year as a result of their poor performance. Buses important as well. I hope you've seen the improvement in the quality of the vehicles there. And there's an utter commitment from National Express that they will not have a single new diesel vehicle, and we're moving to complete clean fleet across the West Midlands, the first area outside London to achieve that. But what Andrew's pushing me towards is the Sutton Park line, and there will be a commitment in my next manifesto to get the Sutton Park line reopened. And just to give proof that these are not just empty promises, there'll be news this week of us finally getting the money for the Camp Hill line in South Birmingham, the Walsall to Wolverhampton line. So 2 that we committed to in this mayoral term achieved. the Sutton Park line is the target for the next mayoral term. And that will come from Walsall in the west, through Aldridge, Streatley, into Sutton, and then indeed out through Warmley and down into Castle Bromwich, Castle Vale, and into the city that way. And it will give effectively in time the third cross-city line linking to the Camp Hill extension in the south. We're making our case to central government with our MPs, getting good support, and to give us real encouragement. The first station on the line, Aldridge, we've already brought the land to create the station because we're sufficiently confident in it. And I genuinely think it will give that east-west public transport connectivity, just as we already have a brilliant north-south railway line through the Royal Town.
Thank you very much. Simon, the fourth and final generic question.
Yes, another form of transport. I guess it's obvious that obviously one of the most environmentally friendly forms of transport is, of course, cycling. Something that I know is close to your heart, close to my heart, and something that hopefully residents on this call will have seen some bikes cropping up around the town over recent weeks, which is very exciting, and down to you guys. Could you give us your views on the West Midlands cycle hire scheme, which, as I've said, is being trialled in the Royal Town at the moment?
It is, and thank you for going first and for the collaboration over that. Yeah, it's really straightforward. If you think of Boris Johnson as Mayor of London, what did he achieve? And probably people would say immediately is Boris bikes. We needed our equivalent of the bikes. It's taken us a little time to get there, but we are there. You'll be pleased to know the bike is made in Stratford-on-Avon, so it's a local product. And actually all the work, all the stuff that goes together, the technology for the docks, the systems for unlocking it, it's made in either Nuneaton or West Bromwich. So a lovely thing about this scheme, it is all made in the West Midlands. It's available there in Sutton already. There's docks in the parade, and they're also available in the park and a few other locations as well. And so as soon as we come out of the pandemic and the weather improves, I want to see a real uptick, because my sense is, from what citizens in Sutton say to me, is they want to cycle if it is safe and clean. And of course, they want the health benefits of that as well. And by the way, that doesn't mean we have to have an ill thought out set of cones thrown in the middle of Brassington Avenue. That was not the right approach, but a properly coordinated approach to cycle hire, and hopefully future cycle segregated lanes, I think is a great thing to have been able to bring to the town.
Thank you very much indeed, Andy. Yes, we got that one sorted out. It wasn't a very good start, but we got it sorted out. And as you say, we're going to get it right from now on. I should say it wasn't the Southern Coalfield Council's or yours or my mistake. Now, we promised 40 minutes for wider questions from all of you, and we're bang on schedule. So I'm going to start by reading Harry Swinburne's question. And it's this. He says, Sutton Coalfield has one major asset, Sutton Park. Would it be feasible that any plan for the regeneration of Sutton Coalfield town takes into consideration having a direct link from the town into the park? Andy, I think you might like to say something about this, because you've already touched on the infrastructure, the transport infrastructure interchange.
Yes, so I think this is a really good question, actually, and you're right. We should be so proud of the park. We should cherish it. We should make more of it. And actually, I do want to see much more of a sense of arrival and gateway. So one of the ideas of this interchange is obviously it's next to the station, so much nearer the park than the town centre. And we will be thinking about the direct link from that to the park to try to get this whole idea that you've arrived at one of, frankly, the most beautiful tourist attractions within the West Midlands. So it's absolutely in the thinking, and Simon might just quickly like to comment as well, just about how that's reflected in the master plan.
Yeah, so creating those links is absolutely critical. I think everyone on this call knows that Sutton Park is what the town is famous for. And as to your point, Andy, you know, having a sense of arrival that enables people to get to the park, which is after all only 500 yards from where the transport interchange will be, and enable them to use the bikes to get there. All of those sort of things is exactly what the transport opportunity sits here as part of the master plan. Exactly so.
And I think it's worth just saying before Simon bowls the next question to Andy that we have great plans for the park. I want Sutton Park to be managed and run by the Royal Sutton Coalfield Town Council. I think it will be much better managed if it's managed by local people who have the blood of Sutton Coalfield flowing through their veins and sit on the town council. And Although I think there are other different resources and groups that need to be part of some sort of arrangement for that. It's been driven by Simon and his colleagues on the town council. And I think when we get it right, it's got a really good new future as a magnificent local amenity. Simon.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Yeah, this is a question from Andy Brazell. What is happening about Sutton Coalfield Police Station? Residents were told there would be a consultation, and that was in April 2019, but nothing has happened.
Yes, so I suspect that myself, Andrew, and Simon will all be lining up to answer this question, because it's another one that really, really matters to the town, and it's a very troubling situation, actually. So to be really clear, this is a decision of the police, or a proposal from the Police and Crime Commissioner, who is David Jamieson at the moment, the Labour Police and Crime Commissioner, and he did have an intention, there's all the documentation, this is no scaremongering, to close Sutton Police Station. He did, as the questioner also said, say that there should be a consultation, but that has not happened yet. But to be absolutely categoric, Andrew as your MP, Simon as the Town Council, myself, and critically, the Conservative candidate for Police and Crime Commissioner, Jay Singh Sohal, have been absolutely resolute. Sutton must not lose its police station, because the police station is the heart of community policing. And citizens want to sense that local presence, and I am a huge believer that it's only through that local presence that you get intelligence that might be about a relatively minor crime initially, but it can contribute to intelligence on a much greater crime. So we have to keep that presence. And I would be very blunt and say, please vote for your Conservative Police and Crime Commissioner, because there is very clear blue water over this issue. And if I'm really honest, the existing Labour Police and Crime Commissioner is now not being straightforward about what his plans are.
Well, that is a really important point. I've never known such a wave of anger throughout the Royal Town when Labour wanted to close our police station. Of course, we must keep it open, and we've had a petition, and I think people in the town are very clear. But thanks to the miracle of modern technology, I have here directly from Jay Singh Sohal, who is the Conservative candidate and for the role of Police and Crime Commissioner in May, and he says the following. He says, as you know, I'm campaigning to stop the Sutton Coalfield police station closure. On the question of that has just been put to Andy, he believes that he speaks on behalf of all residents, and of course Jay Singh Sohal is a local resident, about the need for our local community to maintain our police station, which is necessary for a stronger local police presence to tackle rising crime. And he makes it very clear that a vote for Jay Singh Sohal, our local Conservative Police and Crime Commissioner candidate across the West Midlands, a vote for him is a vote to save Sutton Coalfield's police station. So that is really good news. I think it's my turn to bowl a question now. I think so. I'm going to bowl a question which touches on your wider experience as one of Britain's leading shopkeepers when you ran Waitrose, when you ran John Lewis, rather, and it's from Shiva Nashipudi. And it's, what action are you taking to stop many businesses and shops getting closed throughout Sutton Coalfield? I mean, it's a point which absolutely bears on your brilliant previous business experience, where you really understand the issue here, Andy. Yeah, okay, and it's a very important question, and I will tell you what I'm trying to do, but let's be honest, it is a very, very difficult issue, because there's a sort of tsunami, a wave coming towards us of all sorts of things that are against physical retailers, everything from online retail, obviously the online surge, to frankly the shutdown that they've currently faced. The immediate issue is making sure that tomorrow non-essential retail does get news. They will continue to get grants and support from the Chancellor. I think it will be done, but let's be clear, I've been lobbying on this since this started. And there is just a real important point to draw out here. The crisis for non-essential retail will not be over on the day in which they can open. Anyone who's run a business knows that resetting up costs are going to be big. And so actually continuing to support non-essential retail
with, for example, reductions in business rates into the next year as the recovery comes, really important. Now, the wider point, though, it takes us really back to the town centre. Because this problem was there before the pandemic, it's just aggravated it. And it's why the replan of the town centre, the master plan for the town centre, is so important. If you have an underinvested town centre, which is unattractive to arrive in, to look at, you will see a steady set of closures. What we've got to do in Sutton is turn that round by having a vibrant town centre with people where people want to come because of the choice of different things that are going on there, whether that be retail, whether it be leisure, whether it be public services. The public transport is good quality that we've heard about already. And of course, housing also helps because it brings demand in. So there's the immediacy of that financial support, but longer term, it's much more about establishing the demand in the town centre through all the moves that we've heard about.
Thank you very much, Andy. Simon.
Excellent. It's another business question, actually, Andy. So it's a question from James Byrne. James says, "Hi, Andy. I just wanted to start by thanking you for investing in a partnership with Coursera. I took a there you go. I took a computer coding course on there, and I'm now set to open an e-commerce business this year and hope to employ a couple of people within the next 2 years. In your next term, what will you do to support small businesses based in Sutton Coalfield?"
Right, this is, so first of all, James, thank you for the story, and allow me just to explain to others what on earth we're talking about here, because otherwise we're going to have a private conversation, which won't be much fun for others. But it actually goes to the heart of my job. I said my job was about the economy, and I said we've got a huge issue with the rebuilding of the economy. And I actually think one of the most important things that's got to happen is retraining those people who fell out of work. And James, my apologies, I don't know your background, I don't know if that was the case, but there is enormous number of people. So what we are trying to do is think about what are the best retraining opportunities so that people are much more likely to be employed in new sectors. And what this program with Coursera was a whole series of online programs to get the skills for future businesses. We've done it in the digital sector, our digital boot camps, where over 75% of people who've gone through it get a job afterwards. We've done it in the construction sector, which is growing, over 50% employment there. We're now looking at health and care sector. So what James is talking about is an example of where we can directly help citizens with that retraining. In terms of small businesses, I think there's probably two other things I mentioned. First, we have got to make sure you've got the choice of brilliant people to employ. And in some of the fastest growing sectors, that still emerges as the biggest issue, particularly digital and financial sectors. The second thing we've got to do is make sure we hold down all forms of taxation. I've not imposed any tax on business at all. I mean, we've got the right to, be very important. And of course, what we've got to do is make sure you've got the demand there. And that takes us back to the previous thing. We've got one or two more unusual ideas. I'm very interested in whether we can publicly fund programs of management development for aspiring entrepreneurs. We've got that through our innovation program, applications open there. So I hope from that answer, Simon, the answer is all sorts of things, all sorts of examples of what's happening, but it's critical to our bounce back.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, I think the next question is a question which affects all tiers of government. It's a very important question from Richard Harris. And it says this: since lockdown, I've noticed an increase in litter, especially litter discarded alongside main roads. Are there any proposals to tackle this? I mean, in some ways, it's a bit unfair to ask the mayor this, but we expect our mayor to have a view on everything in the West Midlands. So perhaps he'll give us what he thinks.
He does have a view, but I am not responsible, thankfully, for the whole refuge and collection services within Birmingham. And we know about that whole story. I will make what is actually a fairly, some might say a cheap political point, but I'm going to make it, because doing this job of looking across the 7 boroughs in the West Midlands, you do see incredible differences in performance in this respect, actually. And what it's taught me is if an area is kept clean and litter-free, then citizens will respect that and will also keep it clean and litter-free. If you allow a decline in standards, it becomes endemic, and actually you see just a buildup of litter. And if you would go to I'll be blunt, if you go to Solihull and look at the standards that they achieve and compare that with the standards that are achieved just over the border in Birmingham, you can literally see the difference. And I genuinely believe that brings about a difference in the public reaction to that. We've tried to contribute to this in our own right as well. I've done region-wide litter picks, tried to encourage voluntary groups to do that. And that's fascinating to me as well, because they also tell me that when they get really on top of a situation, again, citizens respect it. So the underlying point here is about what can we do to make sure people take their own responsibility. A wacky idea I've got, I do wonder if businesses would step forward to sponsor a road, sponsor an element of a park to maintain, and maybe that's a scheme we could run across the West Midlands. I've seen it done brilliantly in other parts of the world. We don't tend to do it here because we tend to say, oh, the local authority must provide, but we're not doing it well enough. So I do wonder if that may be an innovative idea here as well.
And there are few things which annoy my constituents more than finding areas of litter where people have littered. And during the early days of lockdown, we had a lot of trouble, didn't we, Simon, in the park, where there was a huge amount of litter. And I think the town council did a very good job in galvanizing efforts. And, you know, most weekends in the park, there are a group of local Suttonians who go around making sure the park is kept clean. It's a fantastic, great example of the community spirit operating in the town. But this may be a local issue, and it may appear to be a small issue, but it's one of enormous importance, isn't it, Simon?
Absolutely, and you're absolutely right. It shows the strength of our community when you go into the park at the weekends or in the mornings, and people are out walking. And to your point, Andy, they've got their own litter picker in their own bag, and they're taking responsibility, picking up litter after others, which is, you know, it's sad that they have to do it, but it sends out a great message, partly about how passionate they are about the town, but also how passionate they are about our park.
And you go jogging in the park, don't you, Simon? Listening to podcasts.
Yeah, sometimes you're on them, Andrew, and sometimes Andy's on them as well. It's a bit scary at 6:30 in the morning, frankly.
Right.
Shall I go next?
Yeah. I'm going to break the rules, Andrew. If any business wants to just put in the chat whether they would be prepared to take on a stretch of road for litter picking, I'd be very interested, because this is almost considered the norm in the States, and we don't do it. And it's just interesting if people would be up to it. There'd be organisation provided, but then you would take responsibility for a particular area. So just be interested. Anyone had any reaction to that? What
a great idea. Simon, you're next, I think, on the question front.
Shall I go next?
Yeah.
Yes. So it's quite a long question from Adele Curry, but I'll run through it for you. So Adele says, what about the other high street hubs outside of the town centre and the revival of local high street and local services? I can't but feel that they are possibly being overlooked. Neither Boldmere nor Wild Green have a single playground, which I'm desperately appealing for with both the Town Council and Birmingham City Council, but sadly, so far to no avail. A destination playground at Boldmere Gate has been discussed previously, and that would bring something to the area, but I understand budgets and plans for this have been shelved. Can this please be reinvigorated on behalf of local residents and their children?
Simon, that may be a question more for you than for me, actually, in terms of the individual playground. So, but I think there is another general point that needs to be drawn out here. The role of the town centre is distinct from the local centres, and it does need different thinking. And Andrew correctly called out the success of Mere Green. Historically, Wild Green has been very successful, and actually so has Boldmere High Street. And I think on the back of the pandemic, there's an opportunity for the local centres. The real emphasis on shop local, on, dare I say it, local sourcing, that's really powerful. And I think actually there's a lot to build on there. I think we should all think about how we can encourage that. So actually I see almost a sort of renewed opportunity for the immediate local centre on the back of that, actually. And you're right, public provision of amenities is a critical part of that as well. So yeah, definitely right.
I think it's a very good point that Adele makes. And I just want to say, Adele, if you want me to take up some of those issues on your behalf, use me as a postbox, write me a letter or send me an email, and then I'll go into bat to help you on all those issues if you want to raise them and parcel them out appropriately. And what Andy says about Boldmere is really important, about the local high streets, the local trading centres. You know, Boldmere is a fantastic example. If you look at the way the local traders there have got together and have driven up the quality and standards in Boldmere, you think of what the deli has done and Pippa there, and also Martin Pedley across the road, but all the different traders, the way in which they've decided that they're going to prioritise and really do well, even in this pandemic. Boldmere High Street is a gleaming example. Now, the next question is from Frank Epijezi. I hope I pronounced that correctly, Frank. And it's a rather good one, actually. It's how does Andy think the budget will affect his chances of re-election?
Oh my goodness. So as is obvious to everyone, I haven't got a clue what questions are coming up tonight. And so that's the wonderful thing about the spontaneity, but I wouldn't have put money on this one. Let me tell you, I'll give you a very straight answer. I think they'll be net beneficial, actually, because I think there'll be some evidence tomorrow of a really important point that Andrew made at the beginning. There will be evidence, unless I've been led up the garden path, you never know exactly what's in it till the Chancellor stands up, that actually the West Midlands has worked effectively with the government. There'll be some announcements tomorrow that prove that. And I actually think one of the most important questions on voters' minds when they go on the 6th of May is actually who can lead our region to do business with government. They're not really interested in it's a blue rosette or a red rosette. You know, we all understand we've got to work together as a team in this incredibly challenging position. And I believe that quite a strong card for myself is that ability to do business with government. As Andrew said at the beginning, and it was a nice way of describing it, I wear my conservatism quite lightly. I'm proud to be a conservative, but I don't have to conform to the government whip. I am only loyal to the West Midlands, but I do believe being able to get things out of government is critical to electors here, because let's face it, the UK Treasury is the huge funder of many things that happen across the country. And I do believe there'll be a bit of evidence of that tomorrow, which net will be beneficial.
I can't emphasise to my constituents too strongly the importance of the relationship that Andy has with central government for getting good things for Sutton Coalfield and getting good things for the West Midlands. Andy and I have been together in meetings with the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak, asking for things for the West Midlands which benefit the Royal Town and which benefit across Andy's patch. And I know the respect with which he is held by central government and the slight fear when they see him coming, because they know he's going to remove their wallets if he possibly can for the benefit of local people. So I'm putting it slightly more bluntly than you did, Andy.
Yeah,
but
you are.
That's because you're a very modest and unassuming fellow. Now, the next question is one of yours, I think, Simon.
Excellent, thanks, Andrew. There's two questions actually from Naeem Arif, so I'll do them both because they're kind of connected as well. So the first question is, there've been a lot of new housing developments coming up in the region. Is this going to continue? Or do we have a limit to ensure that we retain a good level of green? So revisit that one. And then in terms of the second question, a very significant local issue this. We're seeing a huge demand on secondary schools in Sutton Coalfield. And what can be done quickly to ensure that Sutton residents can send their children to a local school?
Okay, all right. Okay, let's take the first one. There is no conflict between building the houses that we need and protecting the greenbelt. That's a very simple message. There can be a conflict if, frankly, woolly thinking and easy way outs are taken, because a private developer, frankly, can make a lot more money building a four-bedroomed house on a green field adjacent to Warmley than they can redeveloping an inner city site for probably more mixed type development. And the role of the planners and the public authorities and people like me is we've got to encourage the developers to do the latter, not just simply do the former. And the evidence of the last couple of years, as I repeat myself, we've doubled the number of houses being built and protected the greenbelt. And I honestly don't believe it would have happened if we hadn't been really robust in that position, because the developer will quite rightly sniff out where there is weakness. Going forward, it will get progressively more difficult as brownfield sites are taken up. But actually, let's just take the thinking forward here. For a city region like this, we will have to, in some places, densify the housing that we've got. And actually, in Sutton Coalfield Town Centre is a good example of where that can be done. In Solihull Town Centre, the council there have been very brave, bringing forward proposals for much greater development in the town centre. And we're going to need to see more high rise in central Birmingham. I know that isn't going to meet the needs of everybody, but it's part of the overall solution. And actually in the Black Country, there are still legion of these brownfield sites for relatively low rise development. So actually for the time being, the projections are very clear. We can meet the housing numbers, which are critical, particularly for our young people, and still defend the green belt. Hope that's absolutely categoric. Okay, and by the way, let me say just one more sentence on it, because it sounds as though we're sort of being forced into that to defend the green belt, which is good, it's all right, but it's also right for the communities that we're building. You'd think, can it have been good that communities, particularly in lots of derelict areas of the Black Country, where literally people were sitting looking at the same derelict site for 30 years? That's hardly a sustainable community. And what we've been able to do is bring them back, bring that sense of community, and then there's pride and all those other things we talked about in the earlier questions. So it's the right thing to do anyway, almost irrespective of the green belt question. Sorry to go on about it, but I feel very strongly about that point, actually. It's probably obvious. Right, now then, schools. This is a very hard question, and I'm actually, you might think I'm dodging it, but you'll laugh at this. I'm actually pleased this isn't my responsibility because it's extremely difficult, this one is. But the answer in the medium term is very straightforward, that there is a requirement on any planning authority to make sure that with any agreement to development, there's also agreement to the public services that are required, and that particularly includes schools and health services. And to give Andrew full credit, he's been very generous to me, he has been vociferous in lobbying for this on the back of the planning decisions that have come. And so actually that is the way that it will have to be solved. And maybe I should just pass to Andrew on this one, because I know he feels strongly on this one as well.
Yes, I just want to say that the saddest letters, the saddest meetings I have with my constituents are when they can't get their son or daughter into a school of their choice. And the fact is we're blessed with 7 extremely good secondary schools in the Royal Town. And people, for very obvious reasons, want to get their child into one of those. And there should be a Sutton school for every Sutton child. And we've yet to see this year what the position will be, whether or not it'll be better or worse than last year. I'm reasonably confident that we have made good progress. We have increased the size of local schools because they're so good, right to bursting point, but without damaging, by overcrowding them, the quality of education we want our children to have. So we'll see this year. We have made progress in recent years. There are big issues about the area from which children are drawn into local schools and the way in which those areas are designed. I'm very alert to that. And indeed, there was a letter from one of my constituents and an article in the Telegraph this week on exactly this issue. But it is a difficult problem. It can't be solved overnight. We have made good progress. And I hope very much this year, all Sutton children will get into one of our Sutton schools. Now, the next question, Andy, is from Keith Mundy, a name I recognise very much, and it's this: the Commonwealth Games is nearly upon us and on our doorstep. What legacy is planned for Sutton Coalfield to celebrate and support the sporting community, especially the many sport community volunteers? And you're just the person to answer this, because you have people like me and Simon pressing you on local legacy issues, and of course reminding you, I hope you'll still be our mayor then, that in 2028 we celebrate our 500th anniversary as a royal town.
Brilliant. So yes, and some would also say this was another, I hope people would say, success of my first term. When we were bidding for the games, I sort of literally encamped in Theresa May's office and said, the government don't back us on this, I'm not going. Because this is £1 billion of public money being invested in the West Midlands behind the Commonwealth Games. So, you know, it's a fantastic opportunity. And frankly, don't we need it given the whole travails of COVID? It's a wonderful window for us. So let's get specific on legacy. I think there are 3 types of legacy that we can look, actually 4. The first one is blindingly obvious. There will be some new sporting facilities that I hope citizens will choose to use. I know they're not in Sutton, but they're there. And, you know, we will have an international swimming pool, an international athletic stadium of brilliant quality in the region. Second thing, though, really important legacy is a business legacy. Now, one reason I wanted the games was actually because alongside the sporting goes a festival of business. And we actually, just as was done at the London Olympic Games, we use it to showcase the best of West Midlands business. We'll be starting at the World Expo. You'll hear a lot about this in the coming few months, and we want all local businesses, frankly, to be the story of their success to be told in this. I genuinely see it as a way of winning new business and contracts around the world. And of course, Sutton firms would be included in that. The third area is the whole question of training and volunteer opportunities. We do think there'll be 6,000 new jobs for the games, and we will also be training lots of local people on the volunteer things. And unlike in London, where you just turned up for a short experience and didn't get any qualification, we're going to make sure, and we in the Combined Authority have responsibility for this, that everyone who participates gets at least a basic qualification that they can then take on to future employment opportunities, which I think is fantastic, frankly. And then the last thing is there will be a whole series of community grants to encourage grassroots sports and participation. And again, you will be hearing about that in the coming period. So I actually think there are 4 different legacy things, to a greater or lesser extent, will all impact on Sutton residents.
Thank you very much indeed. That's really, really good. Now, we've got 4 questions left, I think. We're going to run to time, so we should be able to get them all in. Simon.
Thanks, Andrew. So it's a question from Samantha Portman, and Samantha touches on some of the themes of earlier, but to give the question across to you, Andy. Samantha says, Sutton Coalfield has suffered from a lack of infrastructure, particularly in schools, in keeping pace with the house building. What will Andy do to ensure investment in the infrastructure matches the ambitious house building agenda?
Okay, so I think we heard about Andrew's answer on schools, which is very particular and now and brilliant. But what I am absolutely committed to, and when we lost the battle over the green fields of Warmley, we said really clearly at the time, we will be absolutely clear that the infrastructure has to come in advance of the homes. And that, to be fair to Birmingham City Council, is currently their plan. And what I will be doing is along with everybody else, I'm sure, is holding them accountable to make sure that that infrastructure does come. So that's perhaps the really important practical thing. Other forms of infrastructure, we've talked about transport, that's very important. And of course, there's the digital infrastructure, and in the bouncing back. And of course, we have one thing I am really pleased about is this whole question of the West Midlands now clearly leading in the latest generation of digital infrastructure. It's called 5G. We won the national competition to be the big test bed. We've just had the research, the national research, and it said already the West Midlands was emerging as the best connected area in the country, ahead of London for that connectivity. And actually Birmingham as a whole, not just Sutton, is the best connected city. So that's a direct responsibility that I have. It's a different play on the word infrastructure, but I actually think in the years to come, it will prove a critical element of infrastructure. And to the small business question that was asked earlier on, what could be more important than supporting small businesses than the quality of the digital infrastructure that there is? And by the way, go on, no, carry on, Andrew.
And there, my dear constituents, you see the benefit of having our mayor who really understands the importance of this for business and for individuals, the importance of the digital infrastructure build-up, and the benefit we get from having a mayor who really sees that. I just wanted to add that I had a meeting just 2 weeks ago, very precisely with the building authority and with the council, to ensure that on Langley we really do get the infrastructure in terms of schools and doctors' facilities and health facilities, and that it is baked in at this stage to any building that takes place. So it's good news, I hope Samantha will feel. Now the next question is from Richard Parkin, whom I also know well, who's a community activist in Reddycap. And Richard's question is this: how confident are you that the Coventry Gigafactory will get the green light? And what will be the wider benefits for the West Midland region, including for the Royal Town?
Right, this is a very important question. And again, I think it actually goes to the heart of what this job's all about, actually, if you permit me to say, because It didn't say on my job description when I was elected, go try to persuade the government to support a gigafactory in Coventry. But I actually think it's one of the most important things we're doing. And let me explain why. The automotive industry, as we all know, is a critical employer. And actually, there are some brilliant automotive companies in Sutton, actually. So there's a direct connection with the constituency straight away. And automotive is being electrified. We all know that. The heart of the electrified car will be the battery. So where the battery is manufactured will be the key to the future of the automotive industry. And that is why it is so important that we get battery manufacturing here in the West Midlands. So what we've done is we've come together as a region to choose one site, not arguing amongst ourselves about where it would be, which might have happened 10 years ago. And we've said with the council, with the private landowner, to the government, here you are, this is a perfect site. And now we will work together to secure the international developer, the international manufacturer to come to that site. So Richard, straight answer to your question, I am extremely confident we will make this happen because all the stars are aligned. There's government subsidy cash. Gosh, it took the first time I met Boris after he became Prime Minister, this was the single subject I talked to him about. It took some months to get the money out of Treasury, but it is there now to support the investment. And we've got the site and everything we need locally. So now we have to get the investor, and that fact that there is that government cash will be a wonderful bait for that. So very important. And there are current businesses in Sutton that will thrive on the basis of the automotive industry that will be built around that gigafactory.
Thank you. Simon, next question.
Thanks, Andrew. So it's a question from Raghavan Vidya. How can you provide support and improve funding for libraries in the local area to allow them to open 7 days a week?
Right. On occasions, it's important to be honest in these things. I don't think I can, actually. There is a very clear division of responsibility here as to who does that. I do not, the Combined Authority does not run the library service. That is run by the City Council. And there's been brilliant work, of course, by the Town Council to try to support the local library, but I don't want to mislead you. It's not an issue that the Combined Authority is stepping into, actually. So sorry to do this again, Simon, but do you want to say anything about the local library?
No, absolutely. I think the Town Council, as you rightly say, stepped up to keep the library open in the town centre, and that was really important. But I think it does flow into some of the things we've talked about in reimagining the town centre going forward, because I see a cultural centre, I see a new library that will be a consequence of the redevelopment of the town centre. And back to your point as well, this is about people spending time in the town centre for different reasons as well. Their leisure time, cultural time, time with their families, as well as quality retail.
And the Town Council's done a great job in helping with that. We've got some brilliant organisations like Folio in the town, which do so much to promote libraries and reading. And I'm quite certain this will be baked into the new town centre master plan in due course. Now, we are coming towards the end of the evening. We've just got 2 questions left, so I'm going to ask them both. They're not necessarily directly affecting the mayor, but I think the mayor's got a view on almost everything, so I'm sure he'll deal with it. The first is from Neil Dance. How can we increase integration of transport to reduce the carbon footprints of Sutton Coalfield residents? That's a good one. And the final question for the evening from Mark Abley. Do you think car parking should be free to help boost shops? There's a Rubik cube of a question. So Neil's one first, and then Mark. Anything you've got to add on that, Andy?
Yes. Both we can deal with. Neil, you're right. The only way that we will get emissions down from transport, think the other area we've already discussed is the electrification of automotive. So there's a whole plan for getting them down in industry. There's a whole plan for getting them down in domestic use, because it's about a third. But actually in transport, there are 2 things that have to happen. First of all, we have to improve the vehicles, see previous conversation. And secondly, we have to get people onto public transport. And do you know what? There was real progress pre-pandemic in the West Midlands over this. So we had a huge increase in the use of rail, 32% over 3 years. We had an increase in our metro, That was also in the 30s over 3 years. And we were actually increasing our bus usage. And we were the only region in the country where all forms of public transport were seeing increased usage. Another thing I'm actually, may I use this word, proud of. How was that being achieved? Because the answer to your question is to do more of this, of course. First of all, it was about fares, making them competitive. And we had negotiated with National Express to freeze their fares for 4 years. Now, that might sound quite small, but actually, if you're a family living close to the breadline, that really matters. And the way in which we had done it is we'd actually managed to drive up patronage so that actually the companies didn't have to increase the fares. And there was 40 years of a vicious spiral downwards of lower patronage, higher fares. We'd set that into reverse, and I'm very pleased to say I worked on that with National Express, even though it was ultimately their decision. The second issue is all about the whole quality of the experience. So actually, if you invest in new rolling stock, the evidence is really clear. More people want to use it. When National Express put a platinum bus on a route, as they have on most of the Sutton routes, you get a 12% uplift in usage. And then the other thing that has to happen is the whole convenience and ease. And that's where you come to the integration of bus, rail, scooters, metro, all of it coming together. And that's why you come back to the whole interchange piece. So I hope what you take from that is there is a plan across the whole of the West Midlands, and actually Sutton has a key part to play, given some of the things we talked about earlier on. But it was genuinely making a difference to emissions by driving people onto public transport. And just one last stat on it: 8 million more bus journeys taken last year in the West Midlands than the previous year, when bus usage is falling across the country. Now, you think 8 million journeys, how much carbon emitted if all of those had been by domestic car? So a huge piece of progress, actually. Hope that answers.
Do you want to say anything about parking and business?
Yes, I do. I'm very happy to talk about parking, and it might seem contradictory what I've just said. So I'm not going to try to ban the car from everything. The car still has a role to play, and I am well understanding that for some shopping trips it has to be there. And yes, I would make car parking free for 2 hours to support visitors to town centres. That has been done in Dudley, another Conservative council, and they have seen an uptick in footfall on the back of it. So it is a practical thing that can be done. But of course, if you limit it to 2 hours, it doesn't encourage day-long commuters to turn to their car rather than the public transport we've just been talking about.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, we're literally now within 2 minutes of the hour that we promised. Andy, I just wanted to give you a moment to sum up in thanking you very much indeed for coming to my constituency, to coming to the Royal Town tonight. I just thought you might just like to say a word or two before you go, because then I'm just going to say a word of thanks to you and point out that May the 6th is a very important day for us in Sutton Coalfield.
I would just, first of all, I'd like to say thank you to everyone for their questions. I hope it's been good, spontaneous stuff. I've certainly enjoyed it. And I also want to say a huge thank you for the sort of spirit of collaboration that I see in Sutton Coalfield. It is a unique place in the West Midlands. Andrew's tried to get me to understand it well. I hope I have. I've been to so many voluntary organisations, the University of the Third Age, the Special Olympics that you do, as you say. So I hope I've tried to understand what makes Sutton a very special place. And in the wider context that I've got, I try to think about how our policies can benefit the citizens of Sutton. That's what this is really all about.
Well, look, Andy, thank you very much indeed for coming to join us tonight. I hope my constituents can see the way that local through Simon, regional through Andy, and parliamentary through me, that we are seamlessly joined at the hip, the three of us, in trying to deliver and serve the people of the Royal Town. And, you know, I think that it matters a lot to us that Andy gets re-elected in May, not because he's a Tory necessarily, although that's quite important to me. He wears, as he and I both said, his Toryism lightly. It's because he's the right man to deliver for the West Midlands, particularly after this pandemic, when growth and employment and progress is going to be so important. He's the man who can do that, who can deliver what we need. And he's shown through the last years he's been our mayor a tremendous aptitude in every aspect of the mayor's job. And I personally want to wish him the very best of luck in May on being re-elected, because we're the people who are going to gain from Andy Street continuing to be our mayor. So thank you to Andy. Thank you very much to Simon, the leader of the Royal Sutton Coalfield Town Council, for being here tonight. And thanks very much to all of you, my constituents, for coming along and asking Andy. Thank you.
Thank you.